What's up guys, Local Football Talk here, back on YouTube for the first time in over 3 weeks, since I've been focused on my positional draft ranking series, where I present my top 10 prospects at each position with compact scouting reports over on my site, Footballtalk.com. Today we'll discuss some of those players and others who people are less familiar with in this process, as part of my annual My Guys video, where I outline one name at every position, and one with a couple of honorable mentions, where I just really enjoy watching and value higher than where they currently sit on consensus boards. Just quickly, if you do enjoy the discussion, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more from me, as well as if you want to get familiar with basically all the names that are going to end up getting selected over the course of the first 2 days of the draft and more. You can head over to my sites and or follow me on social media. Links for all that are down below in the video description. Let's get into the list now, and we'll of course start with quarterback and Tyler Shough from Louisville. 6'5", 225 pounds, a 60th senior. With a long journey to get here, starting his career as Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon, before transferring to Texas Tech, and finally Louisville, marked by injury, so he'll already turn 26 less than a month into his NFL career. How much that affects how teams value him is up to those guys, but watching the tape from turning 24, it's about as good as anyone's Butkin Moore from Miami. Operates with great balance, ball pops out of his hand, rarely ever cheats like you see other college quarterbacks do, already shuffling towards the intended target with those wide hashes if he has to go across the field, so he can access all areas of the field, diagnose the safety rotations, finds answers post-snap, but also understands how to manipulate guys in the high post and in the shallow areas. He can really diversify your play-action game with how advanced he is with his ball fakes, something that stood out to me on several occasions during Senior Bowl week, where he easily was the most consistent passer as well. He keeps both hands glued to the ball as he's moving up or out of the pocket. There's a magic to him with the way he can drop down the arm angle and deliver balls on the run, and he has low 4.6 speed to quickly punish the defense if they leave a lane open in front of him. I'd call him more so generally accurate than a pinpoint with those vertical shots outside the numbers. And he's an overly aggressive decision maker, throwing the ball up to where his guys can I'd call him more so generally accurate than pinpoint on those vertical shots outside the numbers, and he's an overly aggressive decision maker, throwing the ball up to where he allows his guys to make plays on it, even though their defenders are converging. And of course the medical history will be the big question, but in a class that's one legit guy worthy of the first overall pick, and no one else I personally value until day 2, I believe he can be a legit starting quarterback in the NFL. Honorable mentions, I already kind of mentioned Cam Ward from Miami, who I've said all along is in a tier by himself, and at this point seems inevitable that he'll be the first guy off the board for Tennessee. Special arm, almost a nonchalantness to the way he moves around the pocket, but also his incredible anticipation and instincts for the position. And Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, the completion rates and total numbers as a passer are mostly a result of a run-heavy offenses that he's operated in, and some brutal drop rates for his career. But when you really watch how often he puts the ball on the money and hits his receivers right out of the breaks on time-based stuff, fitting the ball into tight windows, and then the fact that he's a great power runner with the wheels to really run away from the pursuit, there's a lot to work with here on day 3. Next up is running back, and I'm gonna go with Damon Martinez from Miami, 6'2", 220 pounds, a junior. Someone I've been a fan of ever since I first watched him as a true freshman at Oregon State. Averaged nearly 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns over his 2 years there, and Miami then in 2024. Never seems to be in a hurry, and generally shows a high level of maturity as a decision maker, diligently pressing the front seven zone concepts, and then there's no wasted movement once it's time to go north. But last year also ran a lot more gap and man schemes, where his ability to manipulate linebackers, then reduce the surface areas and knife through gaps really stood out. He plays excellent balance and body control as a runner, to not allow arm tackles or people trying to trip him up truly impede him a whole lot. Offers a diverse array of moves in the open field, and what really impressed me is how adept he is at deploying them in consecutive fashion. Yet when it's time to lower the pads, he can really draw on the outs of the contact. Going back to the Senior Bowl, I thought he did an outstanding job of closing space and occupying linebackers with a steady pace during those one-on-one blitz pickup drills, and he catches the ball alright, but he's just been limited to swings, flats, and those little hook routes. Won't wow you with his acceleration through the line of scrimmage, and he loses his footing occasionally because of how much his momentum gets out in front of him. But a complete runner who can be an immediate starter in the pros and might be a 1,000-yard rookie in the right situation. A couple of other names here, LaQuint Allen from Syracuse, similar type of deal with another ACC back, where he does a lot of things right, A little smaller, but actually has more initial burst and willingness to punish defenders when he unloads into them on contact. Urgent in pass protection, and he may be the best day 1 receiving back in his class with his ability to beat linebackers on option routes, split out wides, and just has great hands. And then Marcus Yarns from Delaware, another guy who impressed me with his receiving skills during the Senior Bowl, where he can change up his step cadence to manipulate linebackers or run straight by them. And then he's a slicing runner who can really stick his foot in the ground, light feet, and suddenness to alter his tracks, before putting safeties in hell with the way he can cross them up when they are asked to step down against him. Next up, wide receiver, where I'm going with Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Another guy I've been a fan of and seen a clear vision for him at the next level for multiple years now. Can get DBs off balance at the line, understands how to use tilt in his routes to create more space for himself, and then he's very efficient with how he snaps off routes at that height, making him a monster over the middle of the field with how he can shield the ball from defenders. Frames pass as well, and has those soft hands to secure those, dropping just 2% of catchable targets over the last 3 years. Graceful in the way he elevates for the ball and simultaneously turns away from oncoming contact, yet he's also highly competitive at the catch point, wrestling the ball away from opponents. Shows great awareness for where defenders are driving from and which shoulder to turn through in order to evade those, strong with the ball in his hands to survive bouncing shots, uses his off arm well to swipe down the reach of defenders, and then consistently is able to get to the marker. Can be a little excessive off the line trying to gain advantages, where he's a tad late to actually get into his route. Doesn't have to choose to really worry guys with speed releases and threaten to get on top of them, and he's just not going to make a bunch of dynamic moves in the open field necessarily. But at the end of the first round, early in the second, I believe he'll end up being a highly productive pro for a long time. 3 more names I want to shout out here: Alec Eierman from Stanford, awesome powerful frame, great route runner, plays above the rim in high concentrations, but then can also take a slant 70 yards to the house when he can really open up. Cal Williams from Washington State, would have been a lot more fitting here if Chris Sims didn't suddenly shock a bunch of people of putting him as his wide receiver 2 in the class. I'm clearly above consensus with him still as a 3rd rounder. Love his speed and how quickly he gets up to it, the efficiency in his routes, and how he always makes the first man miss after the catch. And Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech, another guy who gets up to speed in a hurry, putting safeties on the heels with the vertical push out of the slot, consistently friendly to his quarterback and smoothly adjusts the passes, and then his great start-stop quickness to make things happen with the ball in his hands. Next up though, we've got the tight ends, and I'm going to talk about Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, 6'5", 245 pounds, a senior. Displays active feet and plus effort to take care of backside seal-offs, erases space to defenders, and is able to pin them inside on toss plays or end arounds, and he's already learned to understand when he needs to let go in order to not get flagged. He's also a smooth route runner, always keeps his feet underneath himself, understands how to manipulate defenders with his stem, and then a little wiggle at the top. Does a great job of working towards green grass when his quarterback is forced into secondary reaction play mode. Consistently plucks the ball away from his frame, and although he had a couple of uncommon moments with alligator arm and passes this past year, he's absolutely killed it throughout this pre-draft process, at the Senior Bowl and then the Combine, becomes a load to bring down after the catch, and there's a knack for getting to the first down marker. Not overly explosive out of his stance to create displacement in the run game as an inline blocker, could use some more refinement in his footwork to be efficient at the break points, especially as he has to defeat leverage by the guy across from him, and he only hauled in 25% of his contested targets last year, but I have him up there as my tight end 5 in a really good class, because I can just trust him to get open and catch the ball for me. Still doing my final watch of the tight ends, but later on down the line, I like Luke Lachey from Iowa, has dealt with some injuries throughout his career, but brings excellent hand placement and footwork as a run blocker, shows great spatial awareness to alter his routes, and never dropped more than 1 pass in a season, plus then he uses his frame extremely well to shield the ball in contested situations. And Brian Keefe from Utah, similar story where he was actually the tight end 1 or at least 1 beat for the Utes in the final season for the eventual first round pick Dalton Kincaid for the Bills. Familiar with a bunch of pro-style run concepts and fundamentally sound in that regard, but it's the nuance in his routes, working as a big slot receiver, and the balance with the ball in his hands that I've always appreciated with him. Which brings us to the big boys. First up with offensive tackle, Chase Lund from UConn, 6'8", 305 pounds, a redshirt senior, the best zone blocker in this class, whether it's optimal hand placement on the front sides to widen the edge, his ability to locate connection points to attach to double teams, and either overtake the first level defender or climb up to the backer, just an uncanny ability to apply force on an angle and stay engaged until deep into the play clock. Adjust his approach and pass pro based on alignment and type of edge rusher he's facing, so he can effectively choke off the angle. Patient but purposeful with his punch, he uses his inside hand to swipe away or counter chops and clubs, continues to fight for inside position, keeps his elbows tight to his frame. You frequently see him swat on long arm attempts, get defenders off balance and then dump them underneath himself. Yet he can also really widen the space and dig his cleats in the turf to slow down bull rush attempts. Too fixated on getting to the playside roller of edge defenders, on reach blocks or beating linebackers to spot at times with his angles, that he'll be tested by back doors and finding himself reaching for air a few times in the NFL. And in pass pro, he pries his shoulders open early, too often surrenders first meaningful contact into his chest, and is put in a reactionary role, while having 32.5-inch arms limits his ability to redirect at the top of the rush. But man, I think he can boost the run game for a team that majors in wide zone especially, and I believe he's so skilled with his hands that he can overcome a couple of his limitations as a protector. Honorable mentions here, Charles Grant from William & Mary has continued to rise up boards ever since Dane Brugel wrote a piece on him last summer I believe. Just phenomenal movement skills to execute backside cutoffs, escort the ball to the corner, mirrors pass rushers, and you see the wrestling background in his ability to stall power despite playing as tall as he does. And then John Williams from Cincinnati, a well put together left tackle with 34-inch arms and massive 11-inch grapples for hands, sudden out of his stance to get to the place that roll up defenders, and really uncalls those hips in the run game. Pass protection certainly not by the book, but great lateral movement skills, and plays with the knee bend to recover if put at a disadvantage at some point. Next up the interior line, and I'm going to talk about Willie Lampkin from North Carolina, only 5'11", 290 pounds, redshirt senior. Unique size obviously by NFL standards, and he'll face some challenges because of it. Occasionally gets arm over by guys on the interior, or we may see him get backdoored more in the pros, and savvy interior rushers will be able to take advantage of Lampkin, being forced to lunge or overextend if he loses the fight for first meaningful contact. But he does have adequate length with 32-inch arms, obviously wins with pad level in almost all of his battles, quick out of his stance, and has a shorter path to transfer power from the ground up, allowing him to dig on interior bodies in the run game, expertly takes advantage of the momentum of defenders and riding them too far off track, and his strain to finish blocks until the echo of the whistle is something that stands out all over his tape. He's a leverage monster in pass protection, who stood his ground during Senior Bowl week against guys who have 50-60 pounds on him, frequently neutralizes slanting rushers entirely as he meets them with a hefty strike, smoothly transitions on twists with better length than his height would indicate to steer rushers towards teammates, and he didn't allow a sack in either one of the last 2 seasons. So I understand that he won't meet thresholds for certain teams, and probably goes a lot later than where I value him, but he'll find himself just outside my top 10 interior alignment the way it looks like right now. A couple of honorable mentions here who will most likely go on day 2. Tate Radlich from Georgia, one of the best true guards in his class, crafty, powerful and relentless in the run game to move people against their will, who becomes a bowling ball when he has to pull. You see him get a tight grip and really dig those tree trunks into the turf to anchor against power, and puts people in a cage in quick sets. And then Jonas Avainia from Arizona started both tackle spots for the Wildcats and could survive there, but I love him at guard. Extremely dense frame, but can really get it moving quickly, has some balance in those hands to get the ball rolling, and well-coordinated feet to sustain blocks for lengthy periods. Great foot speed at that size, and really gets those big paws attached, it's pretty much over for pass rushers. Which has us moving on to the defensive side of the ball, and on the edge with Braden Swinson from LSU, 6'4", 255 pounds, redshirt senior. Punches with heavy hands and releases of block when he's near the point of attack, has the tricep strength to create separation for blockers and wrap up the bulk area, and he absolutely dominates tight ends in the run game, bench pressing him into the action, but can also crash for the inside shoulder pursued from the backside, and he's a great finisher with large tackling radius. As a pass rusher, he has devastating power to angles rush through the chest of tackles and condense the edge after threatening up the field, but then it's hand counters that make him so tough to block, times up the punch of tackles and how to swipe or chop it down, can really stick his foot in the ground and slice inside, and then also throws in some shoulder fakes and kinda gets them to freeze their feet, which ultimately softens both edges for himself. It took Swinson a while to get going, not actually breaking out until his 5th season in college, having transferred over from Oregon to LSU ahead of 2023. He loses track of the ball more than you'd like to see, and the moment Whale locks out his arms and tries to relocate after dipping his head into contact first. Doesn't have high end bend to actually flatten at the top of the rush, and rather heavy footed trying to redirect and drop into coverage. But I love all the different ways he can create problems, and was right up there with the top names in terms of pass rush win rates. I like him better in the 2nd round than a bunch of guys when we sneak into the 1st at that value. A couple of names I want to bring up here. Jared Ivey, kind of the forgotten name among that super talented Ole Miss line. Interesting profile as an oversized end who can play the 4 Iowa 5 technique with powerful hands and the ability to slant across gaps, with an uncanny ability to contort his frame and squeeze through creases between bodies to create disruption. relentless with throwing his hands at guys, and has the length to not get stuck on blocks. And then David Walker from Central Arkansas, compact frame at 6'1", 260 plus pounds, with a strong lower half, and the pop to rock back the pads of tight ends and even tackles against FCS competition. Rush is so incredibly low that he presents very little surface area for protectors, with his helmet right around their belt, flashes a variety of moves to defeat the outside hand, and can swivel his hips around to get to the passer in impressive fashion. Next up on the interior D-line, Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech, 6'2", 280 pounds, another redshirt senior, and another guy on the shorter end, but he uses it to his advantage as a penetrating force in a one-gap front, which also limits the ability for offense to double team him. Displays impressive contact balance to not get knocked over as someone arrives on an angle against him, very active with disengaging from blocks and chasing down the ball, and you see him turn his head to catch up to wide receivers, catching the ball underneath a few times. Has big time juice exploding off the ball in passing situations, likes to go through the chest of guards early in games to make them think about it, but it's a short area quickness to go around them once they try to shots at him, and he's incredible at contorting his body and kind of torpedo himself through the creases between blockers, which also creates opportunities for his fellow rushers when slanting across gaps on different games. My favorite move of his is a shockingly sudden outside spin, when initially being lined up in A gap, but knows the one next to him is free, that leaves guys behind in the dust. He may win the lavish battle, but still get bumped off his landmarks as blockers redirect his momentum on down blocks, has sub 32-inch arms, and you don't see him play with vision through blocks a whole lot, probably limiting his fit to an attacking style forward on front. His bull rush can kind of run out of steam after getting that initial vertical displacement, and he's all reliant on a spin move as a rusher without the length to free himself late in the down. So I can see him going in the 4th or 5th round range as he's currently projected to, but I personally have him in my IDL 10 as part of a loaded group, and if you covet this style of player, I don't mind spending a top 100 pick on him. Honorable mentions, Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, and really he can throw in his teammate Derek Harmon here as well, but he's projected to go in the 1st round anyway, so for Caldwell, an absolute rock in the middle of your run defense, but with much better movement skills than he should have at 340 pounds to work down the line and track down the ball in wide zone concepts. And he has more upside as a pass rusher than he's given credit for with the short area quicks and active hands. And Vernon Broughton from Texas, who his teammate Alfred Collins is getting all the attention and has more upside, but I'm not so sure Broughton isn't a better player right now. Quick to ID blocking schemes and get around linemen with 35-inch arms to expand his tackling radius, and then he combines quick feet with skilled hands who keep working to free himself against protectors. Since we just mentioned a couple of former Ducks, that's why I'm gonna go with linebacker Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon. 6'1", 230 pounds, redshirt senior, extremely high energy player who was the leader of the talented Oregon defense. Covers run laterally with square pads and good leverage as he gets himself ready to interact with blockers. Yet he trusts his eyes, and if there's a lane in front of him, he'll hit it with bad intentions. And he has the range to run out sweep plays and end arounds all the way out to the sideline. He's an uber active communicator in zone coverage, with the spatial awareness to position himself between multiple eligibles in the pattern, loosens in his lower body, and follows the quarterback's eyes, with the wheels to hang stride for stride with tight ends up the seam as a Tampa 2 dropper. Plus, he shoots downhill like a missile when used as an inside blitzer, regularly being able to slice through one shoulder of linemen with the rip move, but then will also surprise running back with sidestepping them as they brace for contact. You do see him blindly trail guards, pulling across the formation from the backside at times, opening up quick cutback lanes as a result. He'll occasionally charge into bigger bodies around the line of scrimmage and lose vision on the ball, and he tends to bump out too far with running backs releasing outside the tackle, surrendering easy access to the middle of the field on something like angle routes when he's asked to match them. I think Bassa will immediately start with Mike for some team and be a fiery force for them who teammates rally around. Two other names here, Shamar James from Florida, very similar type of player, high energy, lots of range, not afraid to crash into bodies who have about 100 pounds on him, commands plenty of space in zone coverage, and you see him fly underneath routes to coming deep across the field regularly. Also shows a feel for angling his blitzes and reducing the surface area to get underneath guys. He's just not as reliable a tackler at this point. And then Kareem Reed from Utah, two-doll player on the second level, who keys the action as natural instincts for the position, proactively uses his hands to work off blocks and read the ball carrier in the hole. Absolutely love his work in coverage with the feel for targets around him, how he floats underneath routes and contest passing lanes. Plus he finds vacated rush tracks as a pressure player. Now in the secondary, at cornerback I have Jacob Perry from Kansas State, 5'10", 190 pounds, a junior. Undersized but feisty, uber competitive outside corner for K-State. Explosive out of his stance to not surrender free releases, would rather initiate contact early so he can feel what's coming, still good at battling the hands of receivers, swipe up windows down to bother them, not backing down from altercations with much bigger opponents, will armbar guys in vertical routes, but is easy gas to stay in phase, even if he does lose touch momentarily. He's really good at playing over topper routes and match assignments, staying square to and walling off receivers, disciplined with not avoiding his linebacks in zone coverage, but squeezes down on seam or post routes in impressive fashion, and quickly rallies up to tackle guys with tremendous awareness for the first down marker. He added muscle and competitive toughness this past season I fought in run support, doesn't mind sticking his face in the fan and chopped on bigger ball carriers low, including filling the C gap a couple of times to stop Arizona State bulldozer Cam Scadaboo in the meeting last season. Obviously building the short light side for someone who may be left on an island against NFL athletes with the strength of throwing by, can get caught flat-footed with a receiver shooting inside of him versus off coverage, and was flagged 7 times last season, tagging the jersey of receivers as he tried to create separation by initiating contact. But I absolutely love the guy's competitive spirit, as someone who can play inside or out at the next level I believe, and my comp for him was actually another undersized former Kansas State corner and DJ Reed. A couple of honorable mentions from Kansas actually, Kobe Bryant, a lot more off coverage than Parrish, but can really drive forward out of his pedal with tremendous route anticipation, has long arms and won't back down from anyone, rapidly shoots the gap and doesn't allow himself to get picked off in drop plays or tunnel screens, uses his arms well to keep blockers at bay and sling ball carriers to the ground, and an up and stout from Western Kentucky, only 5'9" 175 pounds, but plays so much bigger than his size would indicate, has excelled inside and out wide, absolutely flies around with mid 4.4 speed, does an excellent job of midpointing routes and zone assignments, attacks perimeter runs and screens with reckless abandon, happy to run through one half of blockers, and sturdy enough to deal with tight ends in different ways. That now brings us to the final position for today, and that's safety, and I'm going to talk about Jonas Sanka from Virginia. 6 foot, 205 pounds a senior, offers prototype size with plus length, which he uses to keep his frame clean when he's forced to engage with blockers, steps down against the run with a purpose and square shoulders, takes excellent angles from depth to limit gains and shoot real legs of targets to actually finish those plays, plus he's a super reliable last line of defense where he has to gather his feet, sling his body around the run and wrestle or twist him to the ground somehow. In zone coverage, he already baits quarterbacks into thinking throws are open before closing in on them. Muddies up the picture for those guys as he bumps down as a robber. When the ball is completed, he leverages it correctly and does a tremendous job of locating entry points as a tackler and forcing his will takedowns when he can attack forwards. He looks very comfortable capping over top of slouch receivers, reading the hips and having a click and close burst to dislodge the ball from them as they stop off their routes. He's physical to deal with tight ends, but also has sub 4.5 speed to hang with receivers on drag routes. Sanka does show a tendency to jump inside of blocks because he's overeager to get to the ball and not really worry about keeping contained on the edge of the box. His aggressiveness to squat on routes and drive on the first break will be punished more regularly at the NFL level, as coaches scout tendencies, and he's a lot more comfortable seeing the action and attacking it than when he has to play with his back to the football, never really trying to locate it. Here's what I wrote down on my scouting report though. In an NFL world that relies so much on the split safety looks, where the guys in the back end have to trust what they see and even up box numbers, this dude fits the description to a T. Let's finish up with 3 more names at safety who are gonna go earlier, but I just really want to bring them up here. Malachi Starks from Georgia has been safety 1 for me since last summer. Not a great tester, but don't overthink it, just trust the film. Literally was one of the best safeties in the country as a true freshman for Kirby Smart with elite instincts and ball skills. The fact that some people talk about him going late or maybe even slip out of the first round is crazy to me. Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State, kind of the forgotten man in his class because he got hurt in week 2 of this past season, but he probably will end up right behind Starks for me in my rankings because he's also made for the modern NFL with how malleable he is in all the different roles. And Andrew McCluger from Texas, really fun splash player who had a temperament to a Longhorn defense as a transfer last year, trusts his eyes and attacks plays in front of him with conviction, can take on a variety of man or zone assignments with the feel and closing burst to disrupt the catch points. And that's gonna do it. Lots of names I really enjoy talking about, and in what can be a pretty big grind at this stage of the calendar, as I try to watch 350 names or so, those are the guys who can kind of wake you up and get you out of your chair. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for the channel for more. I'll have my final mock draft coming out the Monday before the draft, so in about 3.5 weeks. In the meantime, you can read up on my scouting reports for about 130 players ultimately on my site, hellosforfootballtalk.com, along with my top 100 big board at the end of this process. Feel free to drop a couple of names that excite you or that you believe have been underrated down in the comment section. And you can follow me on social media for random clips of these prospects and all my thoughts on stuff happening around the sport. Links for everything are down below in the description. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. So until then, see you later. Peace!